The Vegetarian Myth, Chapter 2 continued. There's more ignorance. He doesn't know that seeds are alive, or he won't let himself. Since killing is the sacrilege in this moral system, he can't acknowledge that in actuality he's eating something alive. This despite the fact that he sees plants as beings deserving his respect. And there is a final ignorance in his misapprehension of the nature of apple trees. There is a relationship of reciprocity built into the human apple exchange, but it's not about humans planting their seeds. It's about humans grafting, planting, and tending the trees and extending their territory. It's about apples tempting us with an offer of sweetness to toil for them. It's co-evolutionary process, and it's called domestication. Domestication is not a concept that's well understood by people who claim to be against it. I saw domestication as bringing animals and plants under human control, and it was appalling to me. A short trajectory that ended in hens tormented in battery cages and primates brutalized in head injury experiments. Of course, my entire diet was composed of domesticates, with the exception of a serving or two of fiddlehead ferns every spring. But they were plants, so I simply didn't think about it. It was the animals I wanted to save from human exploitation, and in the vegan outlook, exploitation begins with domestication. There was an exact moment when that definition cracked open for me. It was 6 o'clock on a January morning and well below zero. I had a half a gallon of hot water to haul through 3 feet of ice-slick snow so that my chickens would have something to drink. Water had dripped into the door jamb the warm day before and then frozen the door shut in the night. Never mind the long task involving screwdrivers, butter knives, and matches to unthaw the door. Somewhere between burning my palm and feeling a hideous blob of snow hit the back of my neck, I thought, I've had it backwards all these years. I'm not exploiting them. They're happy, safe, warm, and fed. I'm the one who's miserable. Chickens won't even walk in snow, let alone haul supplies to me. That wet drip sliding down my spine was like a cold jab of reality. Chickens have gotten humans to work for them. In exchange, they take care of us, but not by bringing us water, by providing food, meat, and eggs, and a whole constellation of other activities useful for farms. It's a partnership, and one that worked out well for both parties until factory farming. The genome of the jungle fowl took a chance on humans, and it was a gamble that paid off. We have carried chickens all over the globe, extending their range beyond the wildest dreams of a broody jungle fowl mom, ready and willing to give all to her eggs. That is the main point of Michael Pollan's marvelous book, The Botany of Desire, A Plant's Eye View of the World. And here's a quote. We automatically think of domestication as something we do to other species, but it makes just as much sense to think of it as something that certain plants and animals have done to us, a clever evolutionary strategy for advancing their own interests. The species that have spent the last 10,000 or so years figuring out how to best feed, heal, clothe, intoxicate, and otherwise delight us have made themselves some of nature's greatest success stories. End of quote. An example, he points to the U.S.'s 50 million dogs versus 10,000 wolves. Wild canines found a better life beside humans. To begin with, there was a lot of meat to scavenge, and the more canines helped humans, the more they tracked and chased and took down prey with us, the more food there was. There are 2 million named species of animals on the planet, and countless more awaiting identification. Only 40 have linked their future to ours. We changed them, asked them to be bigger, smaller, faster, gentler, and they changed us. Half of all humans now possess the lactose tolerance gene, the biological result of the bovine experiment on humans. And our whole way of life changed, from hunter-gatherers to horticulturalists and sedentary agriculturalists. All because we liked something that certain animals and plants offered us. Of 422,000 plant species, only a tiny percentage are domesticates. But some of those have literally taken over the globe. Plants produce millions of chemicals to attract, repel, immobilize, or kill animals. It's how some of them reproduce. And it's how they fight back. Nature, red and phytochemicals. Just because they can't locomote doesn't mean they're passive. And every so often in the evolutionary crapshoot, one of them throws the gene dice and beats the house, producing a perfect match with the pleasure centers in the human brain. Annual grasses hit pay dirt with their opioids. We ate them and couldn't stop. Our grammar, writes Michael Pollan, might teach us to divide the world into active subjects and passive objects, but in a co-evolutionary relationship, every subject is also an object, every object a subject. That's why it makes just as much sense to think of agriculture as something the grasses did to people as a way to conquer the trees. We supplied the brute force. As far as corn is concerned, we're just the draft horses. We need to take ourselves out of the subject position. We need to realize that we aren't so special. We think we do this human-only activity, changing plants and animals to suit our needs until they're dependent on us. But all predators change their prey, and all prey is dependent on predators. Do you think chameleons switch colors for fun? That fawns have spots and an instinct to lie perfectly still just because? Currently, the deer are overrunning the northeast forests, eating the saplings out of existence. In 50 years, there may not be a forest, and that will mean an end to the deer as well. That's because, through human interference, there aren't enough predators, and to survive, the deer need their predators. Pollitt explains, quote, however it may appear to those of us living at such a remove from the natural world, predation is not a matter of morality or of politics. It, too, is a matter of symbiosis. Predation is deeply woven into the fabric of nature, and that fabric would quickly unravel if it somehow ended, if humans managed to do something about it. In the case of the northeastern United States, humans have managed to do something about it, and without wolves and mountain lions, without predation, the results are getting grimmer by the year. The deer population has exploded past any possibility of sustainability. Writes Ted Williams, quote, in a 10-year experiment, the U.S. Forest Service found that at more than 20 deer per square mile, you lose your eastern wood peewees, indigo buntings, least flycatchers, yellow-billed cuckoos, and cerulean warblers. At 38 deer per square mile, you lose eastern phoebes and even robins. Ground nesters like ovenbirds, grouse, woodcock, whippoorwills, and wild turkeys can nest in ferns, which deer scorn. But these birds, too, are vastly reduced because they need thick cover. End of quote. He describes Crane Estate, a barrier beach north of Boston, completely stripped of native plants, its bare dunes lost to the wind and the rest of the wildlife along with them. The deer themselves were starving, having long overshot the land's carrying capacity, and were in the process of permanently degrading it. Without predators, the land dies. In this case, those predators, mainly cougars and wolves, were killed off by the early European settlers. This behavior flabbergasted the Indians, writes Williams. After much arguing and theorizing, they decided it was a symptom of insanity. End of quote. Predator-prey is ultimately a mutual relationship. Each needs the other, changes the other. Writes Pollan, this is a quote, human hunting literally helped form the American Plains bison, which changed both physically and behaviorally after the arrival of the Indians, end quote. And large ruminants changed humans just as surely as we changed them. The high-quality proteins and fats, especially the nutrient-dense organ meats, meant our digestive systems could shrink and our brains could grow. The megafauna of the prehistoric world, the aurochs and antelopes and mammoths, literally made us human. There is a reason they were our first endless art project. As for plants, they've been using animals as a reproductive strategy for 100 million years, since the angiosperms literally blossomed on the evolutionary scene. Some plants now reproduce by creating flowers. These flowers need animals to pollinate them. Once fertilized, the flowers turn into seeds, seeds that in turn need animals to carry them. Some plants harness, the wind. Some plants harnessed, where'd they go? Some plants harness the wind as pollinator and as transport, and the tiny fairy parachutes of milk thistle are the results. Others learn to attract animals. Sex, from the beginning, has been an orgy of color and scent and taste. Brilliant red for hummingbirds, sweet nectar for bees. These plants co-evolved with their animal cohorts. They are as dependent on insects, birds, and rodents as corn is on humans. For instance, quote, several species of acacia trees, known as ant acacias, have a highly developed relationship with certain ant species. In the case of Acacia cordillera and the ant something or other, won't even try that word, each species depends absolutely on its relationship with the other. The tree has swollen thorns in which the ants hollow out nests. Its leaf stalks produce a nectar that provides the ants with carbohydrates they need. Special bright orange growths at the tip of the leaflets supply the ants with protein and fat. The queen of an acacia ant colony finds an unoccupied acacia seedling and burrows into a green thorn where she lays her eggs. Within 9 months of the queen's arrival, the workers are patrolling the tree, walking up and down the branches and leaves day and night. They attack, biting and stinging any other insects they find, and they kill any plants that grow within a 30-inch radius of their tree. Young ant acacias that do not have an ant colony suffer severe damage from other insects. In fact, ant acacias depend on their ants for survival. End quote. Domestication is not human domination. Yes, now we understand the mechanics of genes and breeding, and we like to believe we are in charge. You could insist that humans are on top, in control, self-conscious, but wheat and corn from their 850 million acre position around the globe would argue otherwise, and they've got our back-breaking labor and shrunken skeletons to prove it. Whether life on Earth is one organism and whether all of it is conscious are ultimately spiritual questions. I don't think the answers can be argued, only experienced. And I've had my experiences. I know what I believe. I'm not asking you to agree with me, only to observe. Squirrels bury acorns. Oak trees feed squirrels. Monarch butterflies need asclepias, and not just for the sugar. Asclepias produce a specific chemical in their nectar that render monarchs toxic to their predators. Who is working for whom? Human relationships with chicken and pigs, rice and barley are no different. The first requirement for domestication is a plant willing to stretch its genome to fit a human need. Humans harvest, unintentionally disperse, and protect the plant. These are activities common to hunter-gatherers, and they result in genetic changes to malleable, agreeable plants, like larger seeds and non-shattering rachis. Such plants become more attractive to, but more dependent on humans. David Rindos calls this stage incidental domestication. The next stage occurs when plants need humans to disperse them, and humans engage in specific behaviors to encourage the domesticate. Rindos calls this specialized domestication. The archaeological record shows corresponding changes in seed size, coatings, and dispersal mechanisms. The landscape also changes due to human activity, although these activities are still in the province of hunter-gatherers, usually burning and clearing. A diversity of wild plant species is still present as the domesticates do not provide enough sustenance and humans are still dependent on other resources. In the final stage, agricultural domestication, domesticates outproduce wild plants and humans engage in full-scale altering of environments for the sake of domesticates. At this point, species diversity plunges and humans are dependent on fully domesticated plants and animals. In order for full-scale agriculture to occur, 3 conditions have to be met. First, there must be a suite of appropriate malleable plants and animals. The available suite is in essence a limiting factor. This is the reason that humans in North America were only able to practice agriculture in small areas. There were no potential megafaunal domesticates. Without domesticable animals, sedentary humans had to rely on rivers, estuaries, and the ocean to provide animal fats and proteins. Outside the river valleys and coastal areas, agriculture wasn't possible. In Mesoamerica and South America, the llama, as well as the guinea pig and the turkey, were domesticated and agriculture proceeded in its typical destructive pattern. Second, the environment has to be rich enough in resources that human population begins to grow. This is important because it leads to the third factor, human disturbance of the environment. As humans gathered in seasonal villages, they would burn the area to set up camp, then trample around a wider area, burn some more to flush out game, and build piles of waste. The domesticable seeds, particularly the annual grasses, were excreted incidentally, spread purposefully, or both, and they were right at home in these disturbed environments. Horticulturalists would plant food-bearing and other useful plants before leaving a site. In the South American rainforest, for instance, over 300 plants have been domesticated over centuries of this cycle. The rainforest as it exists today is a cooperative effort formed by the interaction of humans and plants. The key to full-fledged agriculture is the annual grasses. If you want to understand 10,000 years of human-wrought destruction, you have to understand the nature of annual plants. The vast majority of plants on our planet are perennials. Once established, they live for years, sometimes centuries, accumulating sunlight into cellulose. Because they have a lot of time to reproduce, they use multiple strategies: runners, tubers, canes, seeds. Their function in the ecosystem is vital. Their roots literally hold the soil in place. And without topsoil, there is no life, or no land life anyway. Now contrast that to annuals. They only live a short season or two, and in that time they have to complete their life's purpose, reproduction. So they bet the whole farm on one strategy: big, fat seeds. Their seeds are patient because they have to be. There's no point in sprouting when the competition is established perennials. Their tiny little radicals don't stand a chance against the tight mat of perennial roots. They wait until something has destroyed the perennials and bared the soil: fire, flood, earthquake, migrating bison, humans. With the perennial plants temporarily shoved aside, the annuals come into their own. The seeds sprout, roots go down, stalks shoot up, and the plants get to work on getting sexy. They don't have long to send out love letters of shape and color, sweet nothings of pollen and scent, before perennials start closing in, and in temperate climates winter. So the annuals get themselves fertilized, their seed pods swell and burst, and the next generation of seeds lies waiting in the soil for their disaster. Living proof that nature loves an opportunist. From the point of view of the soil, nothing could be better. Bare dirt is an emergency, and annuals are the first responders, holding and protecting the soil with their bodies of roots and leaves. Annuals are like the Band-Aid over a wound, while perennials are the flesh that eventually knits back together. The starting point of agriculture was annual grasses, the wild progenitors of corn, rice, wheat, barley, with the potatoes of the Andes being the tuberous exception, because they produced seeds big enough to be worth the effort of harvesting. They came into their own in river valleys prone to flooding, where they found good niches in the predictable disturbance. Then along came humans, playing with fire, eating and excreting, and the annual grasses were right at home. The plants were camp followers. They liked growing in the disturbed areas humans provided. Agriculture started in 6 separate centers with different plants. Maize from Central America, rice from the Yellow and Yangtze rivers in China and the Ganges in India, a different species of rice from West Africa, wheat from the Middle East, floodplain weeds, gourds, sunflowers, and channel pods from the south central U.S., and potatoes from the Andes. All these areas produced agriculture and then in short order urban civilizations. This happened not because of human behavior alone, but because of the annual plants that were attracted to human behavior. That's the how of agriculture. It doesn't explain the why. Why would humans give up a life of near-perfect health and leisure for back-breaking labor and bad nutrition? And that's what we will start tomorrow, or whenever I do this again, because I've lost my voice again.